Consciousness is an experience that we all know intimately yet struggle to define with precision. It is the feeling of being alive and aware, of having thoughts and sensations, of knowing there is a world outside and an inner world within. When you wake up in the morning and see the sunlight streaming through your window, when you taste the first sip of coffee, or when you are lost in a memory or a daydream, you are experiencing consciousness. It is the theater in which your entire life unfolds, the ongoing story told not just in words or pictures, but in the raw feeling of being. Despite centuries of philosophical inquiry and decades of scientific investigation, the true nature of consciousness remains one of the greatest mysteries of our time. From a scientific perspective, consciousness is often linked to the activity of the brain. Billions of neurons communicating in complex patterns somehow give rise to the vividness of experience. Yet no matter how much we understand about the brain's wiring, the question persists: how does physical matter produce subjective experience? This is the question that has driven countless thinkers to ponder the enigma of consciousness. It is not enough to say that the brain processes information. Computers do that, yet we do not believe they possess the inner glow of consciousness. What sets our experience apart from mere computation or reflexive response? Philosophers often describe consciousness as what it is like to be something. For a bat, for a dog, for a human, there is something it is like to exist as that being. This is called the subjective aspect of consciousness, or qualia, the raw feel of pain, the taste of chocolate, the hue of red. These experiences are private and first person, accessible only to the individual having them. No amount of external measurement can fully capture the essence of what it is like to see the color blue or hear a favorite song. This elusive quality is what makes consciousness so difficult to study objectively. Throughout history, many cultures have tried to explain consciousness. Some saw it as the breath of life, a spiritual essence, or the presence of a soul. Others saw it as a product of the body and mind working in harmony. With the rise of modern science, attention turned to the brain as the seat of consciousness. But even the most sophisticated brain scans can only reveal neural activity, not the experience itself. We can watch patterns of light and color bloom across a monitor as someone thinks or feels, but the inner reality remains hidden behind a veil. Understanding consciousness is not merely an academic pursuit. It touches on some of the most profound questions about existence, identity, and meaning. If consciousness is just an illusion, what does that mean for free will and personal responsibility? If it is real and fundamental, does it extend beyond humans, perhaps to animals or even machines? As we continue our exploration of this enigma, we invite you to join us on a journey into the heart of the mystery, where science, philosophy, and the wonders of experience converge. In the quiet corridors of the mind, a mystery both ancient and modern persists. It is a mystery that has haunted philosophers for centuries and now tantalizes neuroscientists and psychologists alike. This mystery is called the hard problem of consciousness. To understand its gravity, we must first distinguish it from what are often termed the easy problems of consciousness. The easy problems are not simple or trivial. They are called easy only in a relative sense. These are the questions about how the brain processes sensory information, how it integrates data, how it controls behavior, and how it allows us to focus attention or recall memories. Scientists have made remarkable progress with these easy problems. They are beginning to map the neural circuits that allow us to recognize faces, to feel pain, to navigate through a crowded street. With careful experiments and clever technologies, researchers illuminate the flow of information through the brain's billions of neurons. They watch as electrical signals dance across synapses in patterns that correspond to perception and action. Each new discovery adds another thread to an intricate tapestry. These findings are astonishing and have transformed our understanding of the brain. Yet, as the late philosopher David Chalmers pointed out, none of this brings us much closer to answering the hard problem. The hard problem is about more than brains behaving in certain ways. It asks, why is there something it is like to be you or me? Why should all this complex information processing feel like anything at all from the inside? Why does the firing of neurons give rise to subjective experience, what philosophers call qualia, the redness of a rose, the sting of regret, the warmth of sunlight on the skin? This is the puzzle at the heart of consciousness. It is not a question of how the brain functions, but why those functions should be accompanied by awareness. Picture a robot programmed with advanced artificial intelligence. It can recognize faces, answer questions, even mimic emotion. We might solve all the easy problems involved in building such a machine, but does it feel anything? Is there anything happening on the inside, or is it simply a sophisticated automaton? The easy problems can tell us how a system behaves, but not why or whether those behaviors are accompanied by experience. This is the chasm between knowing how the brain works and knowing why it feels like something to be alive. The hard problem of consciousness stands as a challenge to the very limits of scientific understanding. It raises questions about the nature of reality itself and about our place within it. Can subjective experience ever be explained in purely physical terms? Or does it point to something deeper, something irreducible and mysterious? As we journey into this enigma, the distinction between the hard and easy problems provides a compass. It reminds us that even as we unravel the brain's mechanisms, the secret of our inner lives remains tantalizingly out of reach. The search for answers continues, drawing us ever deeper into the labyrinth of the mind. Imagine waking up in the morning. Sunlight filters through your window. You feel its warmth on your face. A soft breeze dances across your skin. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sings. Music plays from a nearby radio. Your thoughts drift from one idea to the next. Perhaps you remember a dream. You feel joy, maybe curiosity or confusion. These are your experiences. They belong to you and only you. No one else can know exactly how your morning feels. This is what we call subjective experience. It is at the heart of consciousness. Philosophers and scientists refer to this as the hard problem of consciousness. Why does the brain create these rich inner worlds? Why does it feel like anything to be you? Most scientific questions about the brain can be answered by pointing to physical processes. We can explain vision by tracing light as it enters the eye, stimulating the retina, sending signals to the visual cortex, and producing a detailed representation of the world. We can describe how memories form, how we move our limbs, how we solve puzzles or learn new skills. These are called easy problems not because they are simple, but because they seem answerable by understanding the mechanics of the brain. But when we turn to consciousness, a deeper mystery emerges. Why does all this biological activity lead to something it is like to be you? Why do neurons firing give rise to the sensation of color, the taste of chocolate, the ache of loss, or the elation of laughter? This question has puzzled great minds for centuries. From ancient thinkers pondering the soul, to Descartes declaring "I think, therefore I am," the inner world of experience has always been both familiar and elusive. Today, neuroscience has made incredible progress. Brain scans can reveal which regions are active when we feel pain or pleasure. Artificial intelligence can recognize human emotions, mimic speech, and even write stories. Yet, none of this technology brings us any closer to understanding why there is a subjective self at all. Why do these physical processes lead to an inner movie, a first-person perspective, a sense of being? Some scientists propose that consciousness is an illusion. Perhaps the brain simply tricks itself into thinking there is a unified self behind the scenes. Others say consciousness is a byproduct, a side effect of complex computation. Still others suggest that consciousness is fundamental to the universe, existing everywhere, like space or time. Philosophers argue endlessly about where to even begin. Yet each morning, when you wake up and greet the world, you know directly and intimately what it is to be conscious. You feel it from the inside. It is the one thing you can never doubt. So why does the brain produce subjective experiences? Why does a collection of cells and chemicals give rise to feelings, sensations, and thoughts? This is the hard problem of consciousness. It sits at the edge of science, philosophy, and personal reflection. It invites us to look inward and outward at the same time, to wonder at the very fact that there is something. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting in a garden, surrounded by blooming flowers and lush green leaves. The sun filters through the branches, softly illuminating the world in hues that seem too vivid to be real. You see a rose, and its red petals catch your attention. That redness is not just a property of the object. It is an experience, a sensation that seems to exist within your mind. This is what philosophers and neuroscientists refer to as qualia, the individual instances of subjective, conscious experience. Qualia are the building blocks of what it feels like to perceive the world. The redness of a rose, the taste of strawberries, the sound of a violin, the sensation of warmth on your skin. These are all examples of qualia. The question then arises, why does red look red to us? Why does it feel the way it does? We know scientifically that red is simply light, with a wavelength of about 700 nanometers. This light enters our eyes, triggers a cascade of electrical and chemical events, and ultimately produces a signal in the brain. Yet, none of these physical events seem to explain why we have the distinctive experience that we call red. For all the advances in neuroscience, we still lack an answer to why these physical processes give rise to subjective experiences at all. This is not just a puzzle for scientists, but a profound philosophical enigma. David Chalmers, an influential philosopher, famously called this the hard problem of consciousness. He distinguished between the easy problems, explaining how the brain processes information, how it produces behaviors, how it integrates sensory input, and the hard problem, which is why all this processing is accompanied by experience. Why do we not simply function like sophisticated robots, processing information without any inner life? Why does seeing red feel like anything at all? Consider a thought experiment. Imagine a world where everyone sees colors exactly as you do, but for some reason, for one person, what you call red looks like they're green. Yet both call it red, both agree on which objects are red, and both behave the same way. If you could somehow swap brains with this person, would you see the world as they do? Is there any way to tell the difference? This puzzle illustrates the elusive nature of qualia. They are private, subjective, and seemingly inaccessible to anyone but the experiencer. Our brains process the world in terms of electrical signals. These signals themselves have no color, no sound, no taste. The perception of red emerges somewhere along this process, but we do not know where or how. The redness of a rose is not in the rose itself, nor is it in the wavelengths of light or in the firing of neurons. It is created by the mind, yet we have no idea how the mind accomplishes this feat. So when you see red and you know what it is like for you, you are experiencing one of the deepest mysteries in the universe. The simple act of seeing color reveals just how strange and in the quiet corridors of philosophical debate, few thought experiments have captured the imagination quite like the story of Mary, the color scientist. Imagine a world stripped of color, where every wall, every object, and every reflection exists only in shades of black and white. This is the world in which Mary lives. From the moment she is born, she encounters only grayscale. Yet she is no ordinary inhabitant of this monochrome realm. Mary is a scientist, and her chosen field is the study of color vision. She reads every book, watches every black and white video, and masters every theory ever devised about the physics and biology of color. She learns everything there is to know about the wavelengths of light, the functioning of the retina, and the neural pathways that process color in the brain. Her knowledge becomes encyclopedic. She is the world's leading authority on the science of color. Despite her confinement, Mary's mind journeys far beyond the limits of her environment. She knows precisely how the eye responds to red, green, or blue light. She understands how the brain interprets these signals and constructs the vibrant tapestry of color that most people take for granted. Her expertise is so comprehensive that her colleagues believe she possesses all there is to know about color perception. Yet, for all her knowledge, Mary has never actually seen a color. Not a single shade of crimson, not a hint of emerald, not a glimmer of sapphire. Her world is one of luminance alone, devoid of the richness that color brings. One fateful day, the door to Mary's room opens, and for the first time she steps into a world awash with color. The crimson of a rose, the azure of the sky, the emerald of grass all reveal themselves to her. In that instant, something remarkable happens. Mary experiences the color red for the first time. She does not just know about red. She knows what it is like to see red. This moment, so simple yet so profound, shakes the foundations of everything she thought she understood about the human mind. Philosophers have long debated what this tells us about consciousness. If Mary already knew everything physical there was to know about color, did she learn something new when she saw it firsthand? Does her new experience indicate that there are truths about consciousness that cannot be captured by physical facts alone? The tale of Mary raises questions that reach to the very heart of the hard problem of consciousness. It challenges us to consider whether subjective experience, what philosophers call qualia, can ever be fully explained by objective science. As we follow Mary's journey, we are invited to reflect on our own experiences. What is it like to taste chocolate, to feel pain, to hear music, or to fall in love? Is the richness of these sensations something that can be described in terms of neurons firing or chemical reactions taking place? Or is there something more, something ineffable, that escapes the grasp of scientific explanation? Mary's story offers no easy answers. In the quiet corridors of the mind, where the boundaries between thought and experience blur, we encounter one of the most perplexing mysteries in all of philosophy: the hard problem of consciousness. It is not merely a question of how the brain processes information or reacts to the world. Instead, it asks, why does any of this processing feel like something from the inside? Why is there a vivid subjective quality to our experience? To illustrate the depth of this problem, philosophers have conjured a fascinating creature, the philosophical zombie. Imagine for a moment a being that is identical to you in every physical way. This being walks, talks, laughs, and even claims to feel pain or joy. Its brain neurons fire in perfect mirroring of your own. If you look at it under a brain scanner, the patterns would be indistinguishable from yours. Yet inside this being there is nothing, no flicker of consciousness, no inner movie, no sensation of color or sound or emotion. This is the philosophical zombie, a hypothetical entity that behaves exactly like a conscious human, but lacks any subjective experience. The philosophical zombie is not meant to suggest that such creatures exist in our world. Rather, it serves as a thought experiment designed to probe the limits of our understanding. If it is logically conceivable that a being could have all the physical processes of a human without consciousness, then perhaps consciousness is something above and beyond the physical. This possibility is unsettling. It raises the specter that our scientific tools may never fully explain why we are aware. It hints at an explanatory gap between the mechanisms of the brain and the feeling of being. The zombie scenario forces us to ask why consciousness arises at all. If all the physical work can be done without it, then what is its purpose? Why are we not zombies ourselves? Some philosophers argue that the very conceivability of zombies refutes the notion that consciousness can be reduced to brain activity. Others counter that this is a trick of intuition, and that as our understanding of the brain grows, the zombie idea will lose its grip. Nevertheless, the image persists. In popular culture and scientific debate, the philosophical zombie has become a symbol of the enigmatic nature of consciousness. It challenges us to reflect on what it means to be awake and alive, to have an inner life, to know what it is like to be. In the shadows cast by this silent companion, we glimpse the enormity of the hard problem. It is not just a puzzle for philosophers, but a mirror for our own mysterious existence. As we continue our journey into the depths of consciousness, the zombie will walk beside us, silent and empty, reminding us of the questions that still wait for answers. Why does the light of experience shine in us and not in the darkness behind the zombie's eyes? What does it truly mean to feel, to sense, to be? The hard problem of consciousness endures, challenging our intellect and stirring our imagination. In the age of artificial intelligence, a fascinating question emerges among philosophers: scientists and ethicists alike. Can machines ever possess true consciousness? As we design increasingly sophisticated AI systems capable of understanding, reasoning, and even creating, the boundary between mind and machine blurs. What was once confined to the realms of imaginative fiction is now a palpable challenge for our society, a conundrum that resonates at the heart of the hard problem of consciousness. This problem, famously articulated by philosopher David Chalmers, asks why and how subjective experiences arise from physical processes. Why does the firing of neurons or the shifting of silicon circuits sometimes feel like something from the inside? Consider the digital assistant in your pocket or the neural network powering the next generation of self-driving cars. These entities process information, learn from data, and make decisions. Yet as far as we understand, they do not feel. There is no inner world, no sense of being, no spark of awareness illuminating their ones and zeros, or so we believe. The question is, could that ever change? If a machine becomes sufficiently complex, mimicking the architecture and function of the human brain, could it develop consciousness? Would it experience pain, joy, or the taste of chocolate? Or would it remain forever a sophisticated automaton, performing tasks without any inner life? This is not just a technical question, but a deeply philosophical one. To tackle it, we must first grapple with what consciousness even is. Is it an emergent property of complex computation? Is it tied to biology, to the flesh and blood of living creatures? Or might it be something more fundamental, baked into the very fabric of reality? These questions shape our inquiry into artificial consciousness, challenging the very notions of self and other, of mind and matter. Some argue that consciousness is rooted in information processing itself. If this is true, then perhaps artificial systems could one day achieve it. If not, and if consciousness is irreducibly biological, then the dream of conscious machines may be forever out of reach. The debate rages on, fueled by advances in neuroscience, cognitive science, and computer engineering. Researchers build models inspired by the brain, hoping to capture its essence in code. Others warn that these efforts may be in vain, that no amount of artificial complexity can conjure the mysterious glow of subjective experience. And so, as we program our machines to recognize faces, compose music, and even engage in conversation, we must ask ourselves, are we inching closer to artificial minds, or simply building ever more elaborate tools? The line is thin, and the consequences profound. For if we were to create a conscious machine, would it have rights? Would it deserve empathy? Or might we remain the sole bearers of experience in a universe otherwise indifferent? The quest to understand consciousness in artificial intelligence is not just a technical pursuit. It is a journey into the deepest mysteries of existence, where science and philosophy converge in the search for meaning and mind. In the heart of philosophical inquiry lies a question as ancient as human curiosity itself. What is consciousness? How does it arise from the material world? The mind puzzles over its own existence. We can measure brain activity. We can map neural circuits. Yet the subjective nature of experience, the feeling of being, remains elusive. This mysterious gap between the physical processes of the brain and our inner experience is known as the hard problem of consciousness. It is a riddle that science and philosophy have wrestled with for centuries. Among the many theories that attempt to bridge this gap is one that stretches our imagination and challenges our intuitions. This is the idea of panpsychism, the notion that consciousness is not unique to humans or animals, but is a fundamental feature of the universe itself. The concept of panpsychism has deep historical roots. In ancient philosophy, thinkers speculated that everything in nature might possess some form of mind or soul. This perspective was not merely poetic. It was an attempt to make sense of phenomena that seemed inexplicable by physical processes alone. In modern times, as our understanding of the physical world has deepened, the question has shifted. If consciousness cannot be fully accounted for by the arrangement and interaction of matter, could it be because consciousness is not something that emerges out of complexity, but is rather something that pervades all things even at the most basic level? Imagine a world where the tiniest particles are not merely inert building blocks, but carry with them a glimmer of experience. This is the world that panpsychism invites us to consider. In this view, every atom, every electron might possess a rudimentary form of consciousness, not a fully formed self-awareness, but a basic capacity for experience. It is a radical shift from the traditional materialist perspective, which holds that consciousness arises only when matter is organized in particular complex ways, such as in the human brain. Panpsychism suggests otherwise, that consciousness is woven into the very fabric of reality. This idea appeals to some contemporary philosophers because it offers a potential way out of the hard problem. If consciousness is fundamental, then there is no need to explain how it emerges from non-conscious matter. Instead, the task becomes one of understanding how simple forms of consciousness combine and interact to give rise to the rich and varied experiences that we associate with higher forms of life. This approach is not without its challenges. It raises difficult questions about how simple experiences might combine to form complex ones, and about how to test or observe such phenomena. Yet panpsychism persists as a serious contender in the ongoing debate. It is a testament to the depth of the hard problem that such a counterintuitive idea remains on the table. For even as neuroscience advances and reveals the astonishing intricacies of the brain, the question of how subjective experience arises from physical processes remains unanswered. In seeking to resolve this enigma, panpsychism asks us to reconsider our assumptions about the nature of reality and our place within it. The journey into the mysteries of consciousness continues, and with it, the possibility that our universe is more alive. In the quiet expanse of the cosmos, a profound question lingers on the edge of human understanding. Is consciousness fundamental to the universe itself? Across cultures and centuries, thinkers have gazed into the night sky and into the mirror of their own minds, pondering whether our awareness is simply a fleeting byproduct of complex brains or something woven into the fabric of reality. This question takes us directly into what philosophers and scientists refer to as the hard problem of consciousness. It is a mystery so deep that it challenges the very foundation of what we believe about existence. When we look at the universe through the lens of science, we see matter and energy interacting according to elegant laws. Stars burn hydrogen into helium, galaxies swirl in graceful arcs, and tiny particles dance to the rhythm of quantum mechanics. Yet somewhere within all of this immense machinery, consciousness appears. It is not merely a process or a reaction. It is the vivid inner experience of being. The redness of a rose, the pang of longing, the quiet certainty of self-awareness. These experiences are not just information. They are what philosophers call qualia, the raw feel of being alive. To some thinkers, consciousness is a latecomer in the cosmic story. It arises after billions of years as a rare and wondrous outcome of biological evolution. The brain, with its billions of neurons, creates complex patterns of electrical activity, and somehow from this tangled web our sense of being emerges. But to others, this story feels incomplete. They wonder if consciousness is not merely a product of matter, but a fundamental aspect of the universe itself. Just as space-time and energy are woven together in the fabric of reality, so too might consciousness be an irreducible thread. This idea is both unsettling and exhilarating. If consciousness is fundamental, then perhaps every part of the universe possesses some glimmer of awareness. This notion, called panpsychism, suggests that even the simplest particles or fields might contain the seeds of experience. While this does not mean that rocks and atoms think or feel as we do, it raises the possibility that consciousness is a basic feature of reality present in some form wherever there is existence. The implications of this are staggering. If consciousness is not an accidental byproduct but a fundamental property, then our place in the universe is different from what we have imagined. We are not isolated observers, but participants in a cosmos that is itself awake in some mysterious way. This does not mean that the universe thinks or dreams as we do, but it means that the line between mind and matter may be far blurrier than we once believed. As we journey deeper into the mysteries of consciousness, we find ourselves at the crossroads of science, philosophy, and spirituality. The hard problem challenges us to look beyond the familiar and to question our deepest assumptions. What is it that makes the universe aware of itself through us? Is consciousness the foundation on which reality is built, or is it a fleeting spark in the cosmic dark? The search for answers continues, and with each step we draw closer to understanding not just the universe but the very essence of what it means to be. The question of consciousness has haunted thinkers for centuries. As we open the doors to this enigmatic subject, we find ourselves stepping into a labyrinth where every passage leads to deeper mysteries. Scientists and philosophers have dissected the brain, examined its intricate networks, and mapped the chemical flows that underlie thought, sensation, and memory. Yet when it comes to the core of conscious experience, the so-called hard problem, we find ourselves standing at a precipice. Why does the firing of neurons give rise to the vividness of color, the sting of pain, or the warmth of love? How can the objective machinery of the brain create the subjective world within us? These questions linger, stubbornly resisting the march of empirical progress. We might imagine that with enough data, enough brain scans, and enough computing power, the answers would reveal themselves. But the hard problem of consciousness is not just a technical challenge. It is a question that seems to elude the very methods we use to solve other scientific mysteries. The realm of physics explains the motion of planets. Biology uncovers the mechanisms of life. Yet consciousness stands apart, a phenomenon that is at once the most familiar and the most mysterious of all. For every explanation of how the brain processes information, we are left with an uneasy gap. We can describe what happens, but not why it feels like something to be the one experiencing it. Consider for a moment the difference between knowing every fact about how vision works and actually seeing the rich blue of a summer sky. One is knowledge, the other is experience. That gap, that shimmering divide, is where the hard problem lives. Some argue that consciousness is an illusion, a trick of the nervous system. Others claim it is the fundamental building block of reality, more basic than matter itself. Between these poles, a multitude of theories flourish, each seeking to explain the unexplainable. As our narrative unfolds, we see that the hard problem is not just a puzzle for scientists in laboratories or philosophers in armchairs. It is a question that touches every human life. It lies at the heart of what it means to be alive, to feel, to imagine, to wonder. When we gaze at a painting, listen to a melody, or fall in love, we encounter consciousness in its most beautiful and bewildering forms. We know that something wondrous is happening inside us, but we cannot say exactly what it is or why it happens at all. Throughout history, attempts to solve the hard problem have taken many forms. Some have turned to spirituality, believing that consciousness is a spark of the divine. Others have sought answers in mathematics and logic, hoping for a formula that can capture the ineffable. Still others look to the future, imagining a time when artificial intelligence might shed light on what it truly means to be aware. Yet for all our ingenuity, the heart of consciousness remains shrouded in mystery. At the crossroads of science and philosophy, we find a landscape rich,